Redditors who grew up with strict parents. What was the craziest rule or punishment you had to deal with? Story 1. My mother is an honest-to-God narcissist. I graduated from high school early at 16 and didn't go to college immediately, so I worked a part-time job while all my friends went to school. Anyways, when all my friends graduated high school, we celebrated by going to the movies. My friend's mom dropped us off, and another friend's father was going to be picking us up. My mom was very upset at me going to the movies anyway, since it wasn't going to be over until 9 p.m., a bad time at the time. Anyways, finally she lets me go on the condition that my friend's dad gets me home by 10 p.m. My friend's father ran into late-night construction on the way home with me and several other friends in the van, and the closer it got to 10 p.m., the more I started freaking out, telling everyone I was going to be in huge trouble if I didn't get home, like, right now. My friend's father assured me he would speak to my mom and all would be fine. I was the first to be dropped off because I was panicking so severely. The moment the van pulls into the driveway, my mom comes barreling out of the house, telling me she was going to kick my for being late and keeping her up. My friend's dad tries to calm her down and separate her from hitting me. That is when she realizes I'm chewing gum. Now my mother hated gum, said the reason you would only ever chew gum was to hide something. So naturally, she makes the assumption that I was late in chewing gum because I was busy sucking my friend's dad's ween. Yup, that was the only explanation in her mind. She grounded me for 12 weeks, an entire summer. I wasn't allowed to have a phone, cell phone, TV, or books for the entire summer. Every morning, my mom would take the cable box, home phone handset, and keyboard to make sure I couldn't do anything. Needless to say, my friends never invited me anywhere again for fear that my mom would call the cops and accuse me of sucking their dad's dong. She also used to report my car stolen if I didn't call her back when I was in college. Ma'am, that's rough. Please tell me that you two no longer see or speak to each other. Also, you want some gum? Story 2. I once got beaten and locked in the basement because my hands were literally not large enough to play a certain piano piece. I couldn't play an octave separation yet. Before you ask, yes, I am Asian. Hey, no one thought it's an Asian thing. I have a friend who was grounded for having a B- and he was, Asian. Story 3. I have a Japanese dad, and he's a stereotypical strict Asian. On top of the normal strict stuff, he's also a strict Christian. I'm not bashing Christians, I'm cool with them, as long as they aren't crazy like he is. So imagine combining Japanese high-respect culture with strict Christian principles. It was awful. So I don't want to bore anyone with a common, can't see friends unless planned a week in advance and all phone numbers of people involved are exchanged, address given, emails exchanged when emails were popular, home by 6 no matter what, didn't get a phone until I was a sophomore in high school, I bought it myself, couldn't wear shorts higher than just above the knee until I was 12, couldn't wear tank tops. If you swore or didn't do your chores or sassed, or your room wasn't clean, blah blah blah, you were spanked with a leather belt. Well, more like whip because it had metal on the end, or we didn't eat. What I want to talk about is the dumb sick policy. In Japan, it's polite to wear a mask if you're sick to avoid getting other people sick. My dad implemented that as a rule. Fine, whatever. Weird, and I was made fun of for it, but okay. But the part was we were confined to our rooms if we were sick. Food was quickly passed into the room once or twice a day. I couldn't leave but to use the bathroom. You had to always wear a mask. Absolutely awful. There was nothing to do. We weren't allowed TVs in our rooms or often electronics in general, just for me because I'm a girl and my dad is sexist. Honestly, I had a really bad childhood. It's definitely caused a lot of problems. I'm still okay though. Like, I did great in high school and I'm going to a state university on a huge scholarship, and I code and make art, so I'm good. But screw strict parents, am I right? I get a ton more awful stories, but I think that's what I hated the most. Not getting love and care when I felt like that. That hurt. Yo, this is getting out of hand. Shout out to all my Asian viewers. Hope not all of you experienced this. You know what? I want to hear what you guys went through. Comment down your experiences and I'll read them after. Story 4. As the eldest son of a Southern Baptist preacher, I was held to some high standards, being seen and not heard, that every action was a reflection of my father as a leader of his congregation. I found music to be a great outlet, but of course, any non-Christian music was not allowed and was immediately destroyed upon discovery. Spare the rod, spoil the child was a mantra ingrained in my daily life. Once I was into my teens and spankings with stretched-out coat hangers were no longer enough to be considered punishment, due to the lack of my tears, my father moved on to shaving my head. Nothing like the constant reminder of how unworthy one is once their physical source of personal identity is forcibly removed. Story 5. I started working in restaurants when I was 17. At this point, I'd wanted to pursue a career as a professional chef for 5 years and was finally old enough to get a job to start working towards it, which I have accomplished. I was working 45 hours a week, going to a vocational culinary program in high school in the morning, plus spending my nights off from work at school practicing for a culinary competition so I could win scholarship money to go to culinary school. My family doesn't have a lot of money, so I had to work to give myself opportunities to educate myself and grow. I remember a period of at least 8 months where I dealt with my parents taking away my car, which I paid for and took care of all expenses for, refusing to give me a ride to and from school and work, telling me that I was a bad kid and that I wasn't allowed to use the family computer to do homework, fill out college applications, or search for scholarships. One of my few outlets was listening to my music, and they took away my iPod, which was given to me as a birthday present. When I bought a CD player myself to listen to the CDs I still had, they took away that too. To this day, I still have no idea why they subjected me to what I later realized was emotional. But I won the war and accomplished all of the things they tried to stand in the way of me doing. Sorry to hear that. Aside from the emotional, there was stuff too. Did you at least get your iPod and CD player back? Story 6. I got grounded from an end-of-year party. I was 11, for getting a B on a paper, even though I still got all A's. I was devastated. It was thrown by my best friend and I was never allowed to do anything, and I had been looking forward to it all year. I had the perfect dress to wear because my aunt's, via marriage, mother had taken me shopping and bought this cool dress that made me feel like Molly Ringwald. I was never allowed to wear it before and it had been in my closet since September. I was seriously having a Cinderella moment, although I honestly related more to Jane Eyre because I was adopted and a bookworm. On the day of the party, I'm bawling. I'm a good kid. I try to be perfect every walking moment. Now I'm grounded from my best friend's party. The mom of my best friend knows how tough it is at home. I'm screamed at, belittled, and hit all the time. This party was a beacon. Arlene, the BFF's mom, barges into my house, tells me to get ready and get my stuff together because I'll be spending the night. My mom protests. Well, how about I call the CPS about the 50 cats in your house? I go to the party and Arlene teaches me to be a Arlene coming in guns hot. I could just imagine her kicking the door down and screaming, "Put your hands where I can see them." And as for all of you, if you don't want Arlene to come and bust your door down, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now back to the video. Story 7. We weren't allowed to have food upstairs, but I had food wrappers in my trash can, so they searched my whole room, ripping clothes off hangers, throwing stuff out of drawers, etc. And for 3 months, I wasn't allowed in my room for anything unless accompanied by one of them. I slept on the couch. That sounds like prison. Would you have been in solitary confinement if there had been food in your room? Story 8. My mother was bipolar, and my stepfather and stepmother were both. I have tons and tons of stories, but I'll stick to one story. I've worn glasses since I was 7, so I had to get periodic vision tests. When I was 13 or 14, I got one with an automatic machine that determines your prescription. I'm not sure what happened, but the machine definitely messed up. It said I was legally blind, and I had to wear thick Coke bottle glasses. I got horrible headaches because it wasn't the right prescription. My mom was fine with giving me meds for my headaches, but she and my stepfather refused to believe me that the prescription was incorrect. My stepfather would ground me anytime he saw me without my glasses on. I kept taking them off when they weren't around because I couldn't see. At one point, I was grounded for 9 months straight for taking off my glasses. He would follow me around sometimes, sneaking so I didn't know he was there, just so he could bust me taking them off, which would also lead to spanking me really hard with a ping pong paddle. Did I mention they were ridiculously religious? Well, I had enough of the crap with the glasses, so when I went to Oral Roberts University for summer camp one year, I devised a plan. When the crazy healing part of the service started when you can go up and people will pray your affliction away, I went up and had them pray for my eyes. I made sure my youth pastor and several kids in my group witnessed this. The next day, I declared my eyes were healed and that I didn't need such strong glasses anymore. My mom and stepfather were very skeptical of the story of healing, so they took me back to the eye doctor. It's a miracle. Her eyes are better. It's not perfect, but it's definitely way better than before. Praise Jeebus. They had me get up at church and testify 4 or 5 times over the next year so everyone could celebrate my miracle. I finally had the right prescription. The fact that you needed to have a quote-unquote miracle performed on you just to have the right set of glasses, what is wrong with these parents? Story 9. I'm a girl, and I cannot laugh out loud because it's unladylike. I also cannot sit in unladylike poses such as sitting cross-legged. I'm not allowed to play Dota or Warcraft or Starcraft because I'm a girl, and those aren't ladies' games. My brother stealthily allowed me to play when my parents weren't home. There are a lot more, but I don't even want to remember them. Story 10. My mother is a malignant narcissist, so the rules in my childhood home went from bad to straight-up disturbing. Could only shower twice a week. Lived on a pig farm. I loathed that rule. Had to wear my clothes at least 2 to 3 days in a row, regardless of playing outside, working, or getting dirty. School was not fun, but I did get into a system where I wore different clothes underneath and shed the outer layers on the bus. Eventually, in my later teens, she slightly loosened this rule. No phone calls. If my friends ever called, I almost always had to say, "I'll see you at school," and hang up. Clean your plate rule. I wouldn't give a dog what my mother cooked. If I hadn't finished my meal first, she would grab my chair and throw it across the room. I then had to take my plate and go to the chair to finish my meal. I never stood a chance. My siblings could inhale a buffet like a shop vac, and she always gave them whatever portions looked the most appetizing first. They were, of course, allowed to belittle me when this happened. If I wasn't the first person in the kitchen in the morning to set up breakfast, I would have to take my clothes off and eat naked while everyone else ridiculed me. My father worked 16 hours a day on the farm and wasn't around for most of this. When he saw it one day, he put an immediate stop to it. Damage was done, though. Again, the game was rigged for me to lose. I had severe insomnia for years, laying awake every night for hours, going over and over about whatever had happened that day and how to fight the next crazy storm coming. I could never wake up in the mornings and just got out of bed. We were not allowed to set our own alarm clocks, so as soon as the signal went off, the rest were already halfway down the stairs before I even realized what was going on. I was not allowed to watch the endings of TV shows and movies, and what we watched was strictly controlled. This is one that actually left huge mental scars for years. It may seem petty, but it's also been well proven that children grow much more attached to a storyline in TV and films than adults do. I need to know how that lost plot twist ends, even if to an adult it is cheesy and predictable. My mother knew this and would often barge into the den at the cliffhanger commercial break and turn off the TV. It was a form of hijacking information to deliberately keep me confused and reinforce her absolute control over every aspect of my life. Ridiculous timings to complete a lengthy list of chores. I would have 20 minutes to get the house clean, dishes washed, dried, put away, by hand, vacuum, dust, sweep, laundry started and bathrooms cleaned. Not being done meant a beating, and even worse was that I was not allowed to go back and finish it afterward. Our house always looked like half a pig pen. Drove me nuts. No using the dryer for laundry unless it was below freezing outside. This was in central Canada. Also on that note, not turning on the heat at night, even in the dead of February, in central Canada. She gave my siblings electric heating blankets. I was told to shut up. Our house was very old and hardly insulated. I now live in a temperate climate where there is no winter. My mother would frequently sign me up for clubs and activities and refuse to take me to them in the car. We lived at least 10 miles from anywhere, and the vehicle gas usage was a business tax write-off for the farm. She would yell at me to call the other kids in the group for a ride, which was not an option as I either didn't have a clue who the hell was in the group, and if it was any of my classmates, they all hated me. There was no way I could call and beg for rides from my very out-of-the-way location. Made me get a summer job when I was 8, picking rocks out of neighbor crop fields before the planting was done. Technically, it paid $50 per week, which is richer than Bill Gates when you're 8, but I wasn't allowed to have my money. I have worked at least a part-time job since I was 12. With 13, I had to buy my own clothes, school supplies, field trips, and summer camps, which you would also sign me up for and then give me a bill for the cost because you're working now, so learn to pay for it. She also forced me to sign up for a possible year-long exchange student program in Europe and insisted I pay for it entirely myself. It was $6,000, which I didn't even have a fraction of, and she would have certainly made me pay for it or forced me into a loan with her with unimaginable strings attached. Thankfully, I signed up too late and was denied. A year later, she paid for my brother to go on the same exchange. None of this includes the daily battles just to get anything done, the fights that were created out of thin air, arbitrary things being turned into World War III, the constant stress of knowing the next battle is coming soon. I had the shock of my life when I moved out, and it was 100 times easier. Not saying things went smoothly, they certainly didn't, but not having a raging control freak over your shoulder makes everything much easier. I left at 17, never went back. I'm on VLC, very low contact right now, and it's working well. My father is a gray man, still works 16 hours a day on the farm. My narc mother was sure to keep the worst of her behavior hidden from him, so he never witnessed really bad stuff. He's hard to contact as he's not tech-savvy. I did make a brief visit last year to see him, and he did reveal he knows something is off about her. They may be legally married, but they do not live in the same parts of the house. It's more like roommates. He will never leave or kick her out because she would take him to the cleaners and ruin his life's work and legacy. She hardly helps out, and when she does, it's the bare minimum. Relationship with my siblings, almost non-existent. My brother and I have nothing in common. He has been so ingrained with treating me like crap that I believe he's hardly aware of how mean and condescending he is when he speaks to me. Having a conversation is impossible because it just turns into him fisting off a dozen ways he would improve everything I do, whether I want to know or not. It's hard to counter any arguments he makes as he has a near-genius IQ, was teaching computer science at our local college when he was 14. On the rare occasions we are in the same room, it feels like he's a total stranger to me. With my sister, it's slightly better. She really grew into her own person after she left for college and was on her own. She has found happiness and success in her life, and I'm very proud of her. We all know my brother is untouchable up on his pedestal, but that rule does not apply to the girls. As for my mother, I'm too busy living my amazing life, with a great career and fantastic friends to worry about what she gets up to. It did take me a few years of therapy to work through the after effects. Mostly her grooming and conditioning of me left me primed for being plucked by manipulative and men. After a few train wrecks in that department, I went to some intensive counseling and broke the cycle. It was a difficult process, but very worth it. Seeing that my mother will never have joy in her life is what makes it sad. I almost pity her, because she will never know that feeling. Almost. To anyone experiencing in any form, please know it is not your fault. Reach out to any resources you may have. Breaking the cycle is worth it because you are worth it. That was a long read. What you've gone through is unimaginable. I hope you're okay and doing well. Canadians do not approve of her. Story 11. I had all the usual punishments. No video games for a week, no TV for a number of nights, no pocket money this week, groundings, you name it. I probably had it at one point or another. One particular punishment tops the rest, though, for creativity and cruelty. One day, I was at a friend's place with my parents and discovered that if we opened his bedroom window all the way, we could squeeze out of it and climb onto his roof. His bedroom was on the second floor of their house, and they lived on top of a hill, so if he had fallen, we would have fallen probably 7 to 8 meters, then tumbled another 20 to 30 meters to the bottom of the hill. Anyway, both sets of parents walk outside at one point and hear us talking, from the roof. They flip their lids and call us back inside. We scramble back into his bedroom and are sitting there terrified when our parents storm in. We get called down to the kitchen and are told to sit down at the kitchen table and await our punishment. My friend's dad opens up the pantry and starts pulling things out, things to make a sandwich. Then it hit us like a ton of bricks. Our punishment is to eat a sandwich made out of the most ill-complimenting, grotesque food combinations that he had at his disposal. The final product ended up being an unholy blend of Vegemite, oysters, anchovies, cheese, creamed corn, raw beef mince, and hot English mustard. I actually don't really recall what it tasted like, other than being awful. Looking back on it as an adult, I reckon it was just as much for their entertainment than our punishment. But damn if it wasn't creative. First time hearing a punishment like this, even the writer of Saw would be disgusted at them. Also, what are the weirdest punishments you guys ever received? Story 12. I was not allowed to use public restrooms. I ruined our Disney trip because of how many times we had to go back to the hotel, not on site, when I was 6. I quite honestly had accidents when I was far too old to do so because my parents had my teachers reporting bathroom use to them too. There was no place I could safely use the restroom other than at home without getting into trouble. Finally, I got to use public restrooms without punishment when I went to college. No, I'm not kidding. But I got pretty good at hiding restroom use in high school because the high school refused to report it to my parents. Why did none of these teachers spot the How? Story 13. My parents once grounded me for 2 years for getting a B on my report card. Took everything out of my room beside the bed, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with friends. A year and a half into it, I asked if I could be ungrounded, and at that point, they had actually forgotten what they grounded me for, but refused because I must have done something bad if they grounded me. Also, they refused to let me stay up past 8 p.m., even in high school. That seems like a prison simulator at this point. If you've made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have some time, I'm sure you'll love The Child Who Is Not Embraced by the Village Will Burn It Down and Feel the Warmth. Story 3 is just unbelievable. See you there.